Good morning. We're out today. I'm hoping to take some pictures of some starlings, sparrows, towhees, cardinals. I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to run into today. But today's video is about autofocus points. I think it's one of the mistakes that a lot of people make in birding, not just beginners, but people who've been doing it for a while. People like myself who have been photographing birds for years. It took me a long time to learn about different autofocus points. And I think the biggest mistake I made when I first got into bird photography is I didn't change my autofocus point. I had one point and that's it, and that's all I used. And that was a mistake. So today, come along, learn a little bit about autofocus points, and I think you'll enjoy it. Well, I'm going to talk about focal points on my Canon 5D Mark IV. Now, your camera might be a little bit different, and there's lots of literature on how to change focal points. Now, before people start getting all upset and freaking out, when I first got into photography, I said, this camera has 61 focal points. Why wouldn't I use all of them? Because wouldn't that mean everything in the picture would be in focus? And that's simply not true. The camera will select whatever focal points it thinks is the subject of the picture and focus on that. So you may have 61 focal points turned on, but it may only use one focal point, and it may not be the subject you want. An example would be taking a picture of a bird behind a leaf or something like that. You might want to take a picture of that bird and have it focused on the bird, but the camera may focus on the leaf in front of the bird, and the bird will be out of focus. So today I'm going to talk about situations where you want to use a half a focal point, a full focal point, either 4, 9, half your screen, or all the focal points. And sometimes in bird photography you want to use all the focal points, and sometimes you just want to use a half a focal point. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. Now I'm going to show you how to change the focal points on my Canon. Now your camera might be slightly different if you have a Canon. If you have a different brand, you're going to have to look up how to change the focal points. But on the Canon, it's pretty straightforward. You hit the focal select button, and then you can use the cursor to move through the 7 options that I have for focal points. So I can go from basically a half a focal point to all the focal points. And I can do this as I'm looking through the viewfinder or looking at the back of the camera. I can do this. So I can move from, like I said, a half a focal point to all the focal points. Now I've sat in my living room and practiced this, and I can do it in less than a second. So if there's a situation where I have a half a focal point and I decide that I need to have all the focal points in focus, I can switch from one on one extreme to all of them on the other extreme in less than a second, which is great when you're in a situation and you're taking pictures and you decide you need to change the focal point. The other thing that you can do is by hitting the select button, you can change what group of focal points you will use. So you don't have to use the center focal points. You can use whichever ones you feel are the most appropriate. And knowing how to change these focal points really will make you a better photographer. And when you first do it, it seems clumsy, because I gotta tell you, the Canon one I think has one of the easiest ways to do it, and it still feels clumsy. But I practiced it, and it seems a little silly to sit in your living room and practice how to change your focal points, but I gotta tell you, I think that's paid off a lot, because what I do now is I change the number of focal points that I use a lot during the day taking pictures. And I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes, but being able to do it and being able to do it quickly is important. Well, now that I've told you how to, where you can change your focal point, when should you change your focal point? So on the Canon, like I said, it has 7 different focal points. The first 2 are single point focus points. So what I do is have those in the center. Obviously this is for bird photography. And one is just a square. The whole focal point is being used. And the next one's a square with a circle in it. And that means that just the very center of that focal point is being used. It's much more precise. And I use that one when I'm taking pictures in situations like this where, you know, I have birds in a lot of cover and I want to focus just on the bird. I don't want to focus on the leaf in front of them or the branch behind them. I want a precise focus on the eye. I will use the other one where it's just a square when I'm taking pictures of birds out in the open, or if I'm taking pictures of larger birds such as cardinals, yellow-billed cuckoos, something like that. I will use the larger focal point because I got a little bit bigger area where the camera is focusing on. The next option is a cross. So you have 3 down, 3 across. And this is good for when you're taking pictures of terrestrial animals such as javelins, wild boars, cows, you know, elk, moose, things like that. These are very good because you're dealing with such a big animal, you can decide that I'm going to focus on the face or the shoulder or the leg or something like that. And still have that precise focus, but because you're dealing with such a big animal, you don't need it to be pinpoint exactly on this hair. It can be just on their leg. The next option is 9 focal points. So you have 3 down, 3 across. It's a square. Now this one I use a lot. That's probably my dominant one for photographing flying birds. So if I see a hawk flying along an edge of a field or something like that, I can use that one. Focus on the hawk. You want to have fast focal points and you want to have it lock on to that bird when you're taking those pictures. It's also good when you're taking pictures of any kind of small groups of, you know, a situation where you're in a blind and you have waterfowl coming in. It's really good to have that focus on the center bird, first bird, and have that pinpoint sharp. The next one is 1/3 of the focal points on this camera will be the active focal points, but not all of them will be in focus. It will tell you which ones they're going to be in focus. I use this one when I'm taking pictures of like geese flying over. I have a flock of geese flying over. I will take a picture using that. That's probably my #1 using for when I got large groups of waterfowl that are flying over or flying by. I will use that. Again, the camera tells you which ones are actually focusing the lens because not all of them will be focusing. But it's a really good way to move the camera, be able to be actively tracking an animal and still having it focused. The last one is to have all the focal points active. Now this situation, and I tell you for wildlife photography, there's only one situation that I use all of them to be active, is when I'm taking pictures by the shore of snow geese in agricultural fields. Out in the coastal plain of North Carolina, it's very flat. And when you're dealing with these agricultural fields that are literally hundreds and hundreds of acres wide, you can literally use all the focal points and be able to get those pictures as the geese are flying or landing or taking off. But that's the only time I've ever used all the focal points on this camera. So I want to thank you for watching the video. I think I'm going to end it here because I don't want to make this video too long. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the channel because that really helps us in the YouTube world. It really promotes the channel, and that's the best way to help this channel. Become a Patreon member. For a few bucks, you can support us and allow us to keep doing this stuff. My name is Leahy, and I want to thank you for watching.